Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. I want to thank everyone who has rated and reviewed and subscribed and shared the podcast. We really appreciate you helping get the word out to everyone about the valuable content that we have on this podcast. Today, I get to introduce my friend and someone who I greatly admire, someone that I really respect their opinions, their drive, their determination, and that person is Kevin Yoo, one of the founders of WearWorks, which is a company we'll talk a lot about in a minute. But Kevin, thank you so much for being with me on the show today.
Thank you, Marcus, for having me. This is really a pleasure.
It is a pleasure. And Kevin and I, we've known each other, over a decade now, probably, right?
Yeah, over a decade.
Yeah. So thank you for being with me. I'd love to share with people that I'm here in my office and in Orlando, in the podcast studio. So where are you today, Kevin? Where's here for you?
Here has been all over the place recently, but right now I'm in Mexico City. And I just came here to visit a good friend of mine, as well as to have a couple of meetings with one of our partners at Cisco. So it's brought me back here.
Very good. And I hear that you may have a little background noise today just due to the nature of where you are.
Yes, they do love shouting out to the world what they're selling in the streets. And sometimes it will just pop in and out. So I do apologize if there's any outside noise.
No worries. So Kevin, let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. You are a graduate of Pratt College of Design, and you are an entrepreneur. Tell us where your founding got started in this desire to make the world a better place through design and human experience.
I would love to, Marcus, as you know, and you are such a big component of this, and I love sharing this story with everybody. In the past 6.5 years since we started WearWorks, this has been a very deep, learning experience for me that I was able to experience it early on, how to actually produce impact with design, and then to actually implement it over the course of time and to see the results of it. I graduated from Pratt Institute, and from there, I was a young, ambitious kid that wanted to just do a lot of cool stuff. And then from understanding that, my father actually once said, if you make a boat or some type of a car, super awesome by margins, the happiness, the satisfaction rate of that from the customer perspective will be incremental, right? It will be 3% to 5% satisfaction or happiness increase. But if there was a product that was out there that could really impact and change people's lives, for example, navigation or something kind of a tool oriented, it would be a big game changer. And that's where I was, early on adapting to my design career. So, I think mainly, I remember you said this, Marcus. You said, putting on a bra doesn't mean that you know what it feels to be a woman. And that's the same thing that applies to when you became, blind. How it actually feels to the outside world and how it feels as an individual. It was something that I needed to really understand, and you taught me that. So I remember we were part of a design group, and I, really wanted to understand more about your experience, and that's where, you came into the studio, you came into the room and expressed how the world is designed for people with vision, and if you lose that, it becomes a disturbance of information. So how to build that up from the perspective of losing sight was something that was incredibly impactful and something that I had to learn over time, and that was actually due to you, Marcus. So I just want to say thank you again for that.
Oh, well, thank you for stating that, and I'm glad to have any impact I can on bettering the world. And maybe we should step back even a step further for those who may not really be familiar with what design is other than visual artwork. So can you kind of give us an encapsulation what is design, and how do people use it, and how does it how do you manifest it in your work?
That's a great question. For me, design initially was very much centered towards a collaboration between multiple disciplines to understand how to make a procedure, process, or the final product better than it was before. So the way that I used to visualize the world was, oh, I see, a street light, I see a fire hydrant, I see a computer, and I just, begin to understand the giant conglomerate of people that came together to build this product, whether it's utility oriented or whether it's purely beauty oriented. There's always a collective of people that really understand something extremely well, and they together build it up to the next level through various iterations. So for me, it's really a hyper iterative process that goes through many different alleyways of channels, and from multiple different solution base, you do have to make a decision and choose one, and that becomes almost a standardized or some kind of an element that works better for specific groups of people or by all. So universal design kind of became a pretty popularized term about 5-6 years ago, and Apple kind of started to use that term as well. So design changed over time, and I think for me particularly, impact design is the one that really clicked amongst the array of many different design word or vocabs. So there's obviously the flex of beautiful curvatures and shines in the car. At the same time, there are impact oriented, utilizing technology, and something greater.
So maybe we should did I lose you?
Oh no, sorry.
There you are. Okay.
There was a car backing up, so I wanted to mute myself. I don't know.
No worries. So let's talk about what universal design actually means and how that kind of brought you into what you're doing today.
That's actually the point, I think, where things started to really make sense. Universal design is difficult to achieve. It's not something that you can just plop down and then hope that everybody can just pick it up and begin to use it equally across the board, in the entire world. It's something that's very tricky, that we need to actually understand the experience of every single individual across the range of every single symptom or every single perspective. So that is the starting point of it. So for example, if I were to make an app, and immediately off the bat, I make the app so that it's entirely visually oriented, that off the bat is not a universal design. Even though you may have a lot of people connect with it via audio and have all these other features, that begins to go into the realm of accommodating for the multi-use case. But true universal design, in the sense of the word, really is building it from scratch so that everybody that we know of, everybody that can be encompassed to, really understands and uses it in the same exact manner. So that's why it gets really difficult, and that's why for us, touch became a really important element, because for the most part, like a majority, like a very, very high amount of majority of people in the population have touch sensation that don't necessarily degrade as much as sight, or it doesn't degrade as much as sound or hearing over time. So that's where we started, understanding universal design has to come with a sense that everybody really can adapt into and understand, and touch for us was that communication channel.
Cool. Let's talk about like universal design. We could give an example of this as in city planning and civic planning, that a city is laid out, a city such as New York or Boston that would have been established hundreds of years ago. The layout of the city and how the city is designed with the topography make it an appropriate living space, but there are difficulties if everyone in that population is not taken into consideration. For example, we would come up with the idea of wheelchair ramps, right? 50 years ago, major cities didn't even look a lot at wheelchair ramps, even though a significant portion of our population uses some type of assistive device where they would benefit from a ramp. And so universal design, what we're talking about here is, instead of going back and instead of creating something that we will then have to retrofit so that everybody can use it later, like going back and creating ramps where there were not ramps, you're talking about taking technology, from the very get-go with everyone involved, so that there is no retrofitting, so that everyone's needs are taken into consideration before you ever sit down at the drawing table. Is that a fair summation?
That is. In this case scenario, yes. With the haptic, with our company start, focused so much on the fact that we wanted to provide navigation utilizing touch. That's why for us that element has been the core ever since.
And you say you chose this haptics because over time, the senses of a human being sometimes tend to fade, right? Our sight gets worse as we age. Our hearing often gets worse as we age. But touch, haptics, tactile, that does not change. It does not fade as quickly as some of our other senses. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct from some of the research that we've had, and we've read all the books and the papers around touch, and this is something that is widely respected within touch. And the fact that we also can't turn it off, that also provides it so that it's always active, and that's also part of the reason why we don't find the gratification or the gratitude. On touch as a major priority sense. People kind of understand it as other things where you can plug your ears or close your eyes, and then you can really see the differentiation between it on or off. But with touch, because it's always on and because it doesn't truly degrade as much as sight or audio or even taste or smell, this is what allows it to be, I think, utilized for universal.
So you guys came along and created a wearable device that would help people navigate tactily. And that's something I think most people have not truly thought of until the last several years with smartphones having more haptics built in. Can you kind of take us back through the process of making that determination and what transpired after?
Of course. The memory that leads me back to the start of haptics comes from me working in a company before I started WearWorks with Keith as a way to visualize frequency into like a visual element. That was actually something that really excited me in the very beginning. So I don't know if you ever experienced a frequency of sand, a frequency or some type of an amplifier, and there's people that put sand on top of it, and through the vibrations it creates this pattern that the sand just moves naturally into. So that was very exciting. It just showcased that vibrations did have an image. I'm sorry, Marcus. There's like a construction.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, no worries. It's fine. You're still coming through just fine.
Okay. I can move to a different room if you think it's a little loud.
I think we're okay.
Okay. So yeah, truly the kind of understanding vibrations, I think beyond the sense of touch was something very interesting to actually capture it in a pattern that could be utilized for design. So that was just like an abstract element that just got me very excited, and to create this new vibration sensation that we call Gemini drive, which moves a mass fast in one direction and slow in the other. So by repeating this motion, you get an asymmetrical sensation. So let's say one of the prototype was a sphere with a pretty large mass inside of it that would do this asymmetrical speed of movement, going forward first and then slow back and going fast forward. And by doing so, you have this like almost gravitational pull. You get this asymmetrical sensation of the sphere pushing or gravitating you towards whatever direction. So that was when I realized, like, wow, vibration can be not just a notification. It doesn't have to be just a tap on that your phone does in your pocket to tell you a message, a phone call, whatever is coming through. It can be a lot more. It can literally be almost like magic. So from there was when I started to comprehend that vibrations could be, the magic of technology. It could be something that is not just a clean cut, like a visual diagram or a paper that's written. It can be something that you can feel, and it could be something that's new to the technology world.
It's such an interesting point that you bring up there about how do we use this vibrational patterns to communicate. And I know the first time I tried on one of your prototype bands, and just the intuitive. We feel like there is an intuitive approach to just about everything, and I felt like the product, even years ago, before the latest iterations, it anytime I had the device on my wrist, it was, in a sense, guiding me, much the same way as a person could take another's hand or an elbow and be led sighted guide. Now, not kind of being pulled along, but rather directed along. And that's such an interesting way of communicating that I don't think most people would consider. But you guys, with your design background and thinking outside of the box, came up with a way that really just works. It just works, and I'm excited to be a part of that. How have things changed since our initial experience with a WearWorks device?
I'm very excited to tell you about a lot of really exciting stuff that's happened recently, and the timing could not be any better with this, Marcus. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how I've been recently understanding or conversing this. Like, if you think about a compass, right? A compass is literally just a needle that faces towards north, right? And people have used this for generations, on boats or on hikes or whatever. And it's been a pretty consistent showcase of technology, if you will, or invention. And pretty much, if you have this compass and all of a sudden, you lose your sight, that entire, innovation becomes flawed because you can't see the needle. And if you touch it, it kind of like alters it and so on. So this visual element of a compass, just pointing a needle towards the direction you want to face or you want to go, is a very, very simple thing. We just converted it into haptics. So it's literally a compass that you can feel. And that's the orientation part of it, right? It doesn't vibrate when you're going the right direction. And as soon as you deviate off the pathway, it begins to vibrate and get stronger. But that's the intuitive part that we do really value, in WearWorks, and that's been the major component of the patents that we've initiated in the beginning, because it is such a simple solution that happens to just work as well as a compass, but that is universal. You don't need to see it or to have it been telling you information. You can just feel that information, and across the board, everybody will get that same information. So that's the part that we really pride ourselves to, that technology and that innovation of the intuitivity of haptic compass, if you will.
So where does that bring us today?
So today, the exciting part is we have just submitted our official app to the App Store. So we've gone through this stage a couple of times, we've been refining it, and by Wednesday, we should have the official Wayband app in the App Store for purchasing. And for the ones that have pre-ordered the Wayband, and of course you, Marcus, who has been with us from the very, very beginning, we will get the 1 year of the Wayband app for free. And people that are grandfathered in and are influencers like yourself, Marcus, we would love to just provide you with the app forever for free, and to keep on giving you more of our technology as we go. The manufacturing portion of the Wayband has been fully completed, and now we're waiting to be receiving and assembling all the components by March. So by mid-March, we'll be beginning to ship out the Waybands. And the Wayband app will be released just around the same time, so that the users can have a little bit of a use case before the Waybands come. And then once they come, they can connect to it and begin to experience it with the phone in their pocket.
I'm really, really looking forward to it, and I'd like to share a little bit too with listeners how I feel the intuitiveness is, because not everyone is like you, Kevin. Not everyone loves technology. Not everyone loves to figure out their newest technology. I know quite a few people that are resistant to technology change, and I can be that way a little bit too. But for example, something that would just click with people. For example, we would a person like myself who was wearing the device might enter an address that we want to walk to that's 3 blocks away, and if I walk past that, if I for some reason walk past my location that I'm targeted to, I'll be receiving information via haptics on my arm, such as some very strong presses, right? Something that would intuitively almost say stop. That would say stop, just doing it through feeling. And so I want to encourage anyone who is listening who is blind or visually impaired who might be interested in one of these devices to really try this, because it is going to be very, very user-friendly, very simplified. And the language portion, developing this language, which has also been a passion of yours, that's coming around and always developing too, right?
Yes. So to hop on that, Marcus, and thank you so much. I think you're, I'm also not a tech guy, even though I'm in the tech world, which is odd to say. But, before I started the company, I had a bunch of different wearable devices. I was never really satisfied with them. And to get the notification on a wearable device, and then to look at the phone, and then to have this now multi-interaction with technology instead of just getting the information right away, was kind of quite frustrating for me. That's why we developed our own hardware and software to be able to over time give a very large variety of information all through haptics. So going into that, we have Haptic Labs, which has been created for several years now, and we're finally beginning to push it out. This allows for you to create your own custom haptics and to apply it to different notifications. So it could be, your wife calling, or it could be your kids, and you can distinguish specifically the haptic frequency and amplitude change based on that. So very important topics, very high prioritized things. You can really differentiate from the lower priority things, and you can separate work stuff to personal stuff all through haptics. So you can really start, and then even on that, not just prioritization, but you can really start to get nuanced information on things that could potentially be, very, very, very broad. So that's where we want to get to.
And so you ultimately, this product is extremely compassionate. This product is helping folks like myself who may not have any visual point of reference get from point A to point B, which of course is one of the biggest difficulties of living with any kind of visual impairment. Is there an experience, my book, my story, and the story of Jennifer, who was there in the hospital for me. And I'd like to share too that some of the times in the last 25 plus years of blindness that I have been the most afraid have been times when I have been out going somewhere and I got turned around and I did not know where I was, and for whatever amount of reasons I was lost. And I could remember the compassionate people that were around me that may have seen me going up and down a block 2 or 3 times trying to figure out where I was, came and said to me, "Hey, can I help you find something?" And those types of acts of compassion in a time where I was struggling and suffering were very meaningful to me. To know that I could strap something on my wrist before I head out the door that might help me save that time that I may have been wandering around, I feel like is an extremely compassionate product, if a product itself can be considered compassionate. So how about you? Can you give me an example of a time that someone has been there for you, whether it's in the creation of this project or in school or life in general?
So many times, Marcus. I think that's what keeps the world go around, even in the midst of absolute chaos, pandemic, etc. Right? I think in these moments, right, our company, the team, has been more important than ever, even though we meet less than ever. So I feel like us giving each other motivation has been one of the major component of keeping ourselves hyper motivated, especially when things, when one of us gets COVID or one of us is far away and something personal or family stuff happens. We try our best to keep each other motivated and to be there for each other. And I actually, I guess that's a pretty recent one. I got COVID before I went back to New York, so I had to quarantine myself in a hotel, and I didn't think that I would get so ill, but it was a very, I lost my smell. It was a new thing, a new experience that was degrading my emotions and my personal health and everything else, my happiness level. And amongst that, the stress of everything, the company, manufacturing, software, firmware. So when all of this was happening, I needed to really lean on Keith and the team. So I guess it's just the first thing that pops in my mind is, when I was feeling sick and when I felt down and, the stress was high, to know that my team and Keith especially, my co-founder was there to help out, to just pick up the weight and to feel relieved of that stress and anxiety was, I think, one of the more strong ties that we've had that built us even further along. And stress itself can be enough to break somebody down. But I think when you now experience like a pandemic as well as travel things, everything kind of falling through, plans and delays, stress on top of health, that's when people can really use, the reassurance and help. So I got to say, I thank my team, and I really have to thank Keith and, everybody else that's been really supporting us to this time, that kept it going and really kept my motivation up. And they're the reason why we're still going.
Good. I love to hear that. And I know that throughout the last couple of years, you guys have been checking in on us too, and we appreciate that. Just knowing that how can we reach out? How do we stay connected? How do we stay human when we are isolating, when we are separated, when we are distancing? And if anybody is listening that remembers a previous episode with Keith Kirkland also talking about WearWorks, this is your co-founder, and I'm just proud to have you guys as friends, and proud that there's a device that's coming out on the market that is such an innovative, creative product. It's really cool. For me, I know that we often say there's nothing new under the sun, but the first time I put on a WearWorks device, I realized, okay, this is new. This is different, and this is cool. This has so much upside potential to help people. I'm just proud to be an advisor for the company and offer any insight that I can. So thank you guys for giving me that opportunity for the last several years.
And thank you, Marcus. Seriously, when I say this, I mean it. Without you, there will be no WearWorks, because I literally reached out to you as the first person after all the whole design understanding of impact. And then when we decided to, get together, Keith, myself, and start like a company, that's when you're the first person that I called. And then from there, you really supported us and educated us on everything. And the books that I read on you and the whole rehabilitation process really was a key component to understanding, really, I think I can't push that enough, like understanding the organizations, the community, and how to actually like help without being intrusive. Like that's the only thing that we really wanted to do, is how do we create design that can be actually helpful without complications and without too much, nonsense, and the core of the technology.
It's being intentional, right? It's being intentional about what you do, and you guys do that very, very well. Thank you for not only working to create something that is universally designed and accepted, but it's also just so easy. I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
Wonderful. Yes, Michael, thank you.
Hey, I got a couple of rapid fire questions for you in the time that we have left today. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, well, actually, before we get into rapid fire questions, let me ask you one other question. You know that I work a lot with doctors and nurses and in hospitals, healthcare institutions. Where have you seen, or do you have any experiences where you have seen helpful designs in a healthcare setting? Because that's a whole different area of healthcare design. So where else have you seen healthcare designs that leave you excited?
That's a great question. So I'm from South Korea, and my uncle has a healthcare company out there. So whenever I went to go visit, I used to go every year before COVID and such. He was working on two major products. One is an X-ray that doesn't have any radioactive, in the procedure, and the second one was a personalized kiosk, something that you kind of see more and more these days, but back in the day it was quite new. And the kiosk would be implemented into like a giant complex of a couple hundred, thousands of suites. And instead of going to the hospital, they can just do a general checkup using these kiosks that's already implemented into the lobby of the apartments and such. So these two were very exciting, and he was opening up several hospitals all around Asia, utilizing the new X-rays and the new kiosks into the ecosystem. And that for me was quite impactful because I understood the bigger umbrella, which was a lot of people are not in the prime health, and if you want to get information, the pretty much doing that, like going to the hospital, meeting a doctor, getting the diagnostics and getting that data is difficult and time consuming. So the health kiosk was one thing that I definitely saw a lot of potential in, and it seems to be doing quite well. The X-ray, I also used it myself. It's a very small, compact device, and it literally, you can carry it around with you, and you can get X-rays wherever you want without having the whole room that's like radioactive safe and so on. Mm-hmm. So I think these innovations in the healthcare world really push the boundaries, and I think are actual innovations that could improve healthcare into places all around the world. You can actually have this X-ray in third world countries. You can have them in any location. A doctor can just carry it in a briefcase, go and take X-rays, give them the data, and diagnose. And the health kiosk can also be implemented in places that without too many hospitals, they're overwhelmed from, let's say, COVID or from other things, and it could be more of an independent way to keep yourself in check. So giving people more power to be able to do that, I think is a really great element of innovation. And my sister is a doctor. She's an anesthesiologist. So she always complains to me or talks to me about working in hospitals. And the technology is advanced, but I think there's still a lot, like you said, in healthcare. It's just much more difficult to get products into healthcare because there's a lot more certifications that needs to be done. But for example, a wearable device, she was saying, that could communicate to me that a patient is in danger, or if a patient, their heart rate level goes up to XYZ, I want the Wayband to guide me to that exact room so that there's no confusion, there's no checkups. It's just emergency, something's happening, Wayband guides me exactly to that room, and you just go there. So that's something that we definitely have talked about to implement, which is more for the nurses and the doctors, and those are probably more easier to get implemented than direct to patients.
Interesting stuff and cool innovations all around. Again, this goes back to universal design, that these nurses, these docs who might be wearing the Waybands on the floor have no visual impairments, but it is still something that they can utilize that will help their life, just like it will help someone like me be able to navigate. It's a cool thing, man. It's a cool thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so rapid fire questions. My first one for you. Let's say that you are stranded on a desert island, and on this desert island, you can take one piece of art with you. What is the piece of art that you would keep on your desert island?
Wow.
Book, film, theater, whatever else, album. What's your piece of art?
That's a great one because I don't know if you know this, but I was an artist growing up my whole life. Both my aunts, from my mother and from my father's side, they're both artists. And I grew up heavily influenced by art, especially painting. So I grew up painting since I was 6 years old, oil painting at 8, and I went all the way to going to private art schools, high school, and went to design school in college. So art is very much deeply ingrained to my soul, I guess, in my life. I'm more of I love creating art. I think still to this date, sculptures are my favorite. I got into sculpture after painting. Storm King is one of my favorite places in the world, and my favorite piece in Storm King is Maya Lin's landscape piece. So it's not it's probably the hardest thing to bring if I were to bring anything. It's literally a giant landscape that's been altered to be these waves. So it's like ginormous lumps going in, forward and back, like about, I would say about half a mile out, just ginormous lumps. And if you go into the center of it, it's an incredible experience. It's you can run around it. So I think that's a really weird answer, but that's just the one that really speaks to me. It's something that I would love to have in an island.
And where could, if someone wanted to experience that piece of art themselves, where would they experience that?
It's in Storm King in New York. It's actually in upstate. It's right next to Dia Beacon. So Dia Beacon is a pretty well-known permanent installation, art gallery, and Storm King is right across the river from that. Also a permanent art installation of the most prominent artists, I think, around the world.
Nice. Thank you for that. All right, second rapid fire question. If you could live for one day as any fictional character, what fictional character would you choose and why?
Wow. These are awesome. These are great, Marcus. I would say, it's so crazy because I don't even read fictional books anymore. But the thing that does pop in my head is probably Peter Pan, just so I can fly around.
All right, very fair enough. Peter Pan. And last question for you is: if you opened up your wallet right now, or your PayPal account, or whatever crypto app that you're using, and you found that $100 had magically appeared in your wallet, your account, what is the first thing you would spend that money on?
I would say, just because I'm in Mexico City, I would definitely get all my friends tacos, for unlimited tacos for the day.
And I think whenever you bring friends tacos, you make a lot more friends. That's fantastic. Kevin, I cannot thank you enough for being with me today and for your influence in creating these products that will help a certain section of society, and then that's also going to open up to be impactful for even more people around the world. I'm really impressed with the work that you've done, and thank you for trying to make the world a better place for people like me too.
And thank you, Marcus, for being so incredible and being influential for us and for others in the world. And your influence will only grow stronger. And with that, it's just going to be incredible to follow you. So thank you for everything you're doing and the beautiful words.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to look at your website, it is
www.WearWorks, WEAR.works, WORKS.
Very good. Kevin, thank you again so much for being with me today on the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. Thank you also for subscribing, for rating, reviewing, and all those fun social media things that help us get the word out. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, inspire resilience, and provide perspective. Thank you all so much for being with me, and we will see you next time on Compassion and Courage.
Thank you, Marcus.